right. Hey, everyone. Everyone, say hi.
Hello.
Hi.
Hi.
Howdy.
Oh, okay, there's the hi.
Hi.
Welcome back, everyone, to Sharing the Magic. No, everybody. Hey, everyone. Everyone, say hi. Oh,
Hello.
Hi.
Howdy.
oh, I hear myself already. Okay. Um, Today we are joined by someone who has spent probably like a lifetime, not just appreciating Disney, but helping tell the story of why it matters.
Mhm.
Our guest is Matt McKim, a true Disney historian, a storyteller, a creator whose work has helped fans see the parks, the people, the history behind the magic, and a little more wonder and a lot more depth. I think that's fair to say that you go a little bit deeper than a lot of people.
Oh,
Matt,
well,
um,
thank you.
yeah, Matt has a gift of noticing the details that most people, I think, walk right past. The names, the design choices, the hidden history, the little pieces of imagination that makes Disney feel alive. So today we're going to talk Disney history, creativity, memory, and all the details that makes the parks and all the Disney stuff feel like home um, to many of us. Ooh, to many of us. Oh, gosh. So here's my goofy greeting to Matt. Well, hey there. Welcome to Matt
Thank you.
McKim.
Thank
Yeah.
you. Thank you.
Welcome to Sharing the Magic.
Yeah, thank you.
So we often start the podcast of just just asking, what is it about Disney that made what was it that made you fall in love with Disney? What was that first moment, or what's the story behind your love for Disney?
Well, I didn't have a choice. My dad was one of the first group of Imagineers in 1954. So I came along 10 years later and in 1964. And I used to joke that I didn't have a non-Disney t-shirt until I was 14. Exaggeration there, but I just grew up with it. We joke the fact that our us second generationers have black blood, Mickey blood in us,
Hmm.
and so I can't say I'm necessarily a collector by choice, but you end up collecting things both through childhood and then working for the company. Um, so
Hmm.
yeah, in fact, you were talking about noticing details and such, and I actually have friends that don't particularly like to go to theme parks with me because I'm always critiquing things. So I am detail oriented, and that was something I think my dad instilled in us. I have a brother, an older brother, who actually great illustrator, and he was a Disney, well, not just Disney, but an animator, both for Disney for quite a few years. And so we both grew up in a very creative household.
Hmm.
Um, I grew up with Disney. I grew up going to the studio. I grew up going to WED. And so a lot of these people that are, Disney legends now were just family friends, friends of my
Hmm.
dad's, colleagues, and such. And I have my five favorite growing up that um, they talked to me and not down to me as an adult. They
Yeah.
were truly interested in me and what I was doing and how my mind worked, so they could design for kids. It's they talking about the Peter Pan theory of not growing up, and I think the most successful designers at Disney are that way.
I'm
They
so
just
happy you said that. I have to tell you, it makes me, I don't know what it is, but just to hear them, oh, you mean I don't have to? Oh, good. Okay, you mean that might lead to my success and not my ultimate doom? Oh, wonderful.
well, and I think too, what makes a great Imagineer is curiosity, and
Yes.
you constantly have to be looking, searching, learning, trying to figure things out
Hmm.
and trying to find a better way to do things too. So and that's part of Walt's thinking of forward thinking and
Forward thinking.
one foot in the past and one foot in the future.
Gosh, that is so timely that you said that. That is literally the conversation I've been having with so many people in their businesses and their personal lives. It's sort of, and we just had this conversation a while back, or actually we're talking about nostalgia, of how nostalgia can be both productive
Mm,
and destructive, because nostalgia in one sense it can be a beautiful, it can be empowering, it can help you to remember the past, it can help give you strength for the present challenges of the moment.
sure,
But if you're tethered to the
sure.
past and then if you're damned to the past, that's not, then you can't move anywhere, you can't move forward.
Oh, sure.
And I love, like, Walt was, what I hear from a lot of people is, I love when people talk about Walt, because the visionary mindset that he had, I call it faithful courage. It's faithful
Yeah,
courage to go, I was it risky, some of the things he did? Nobody else did what Walt did.
absolutely.
Gosh, that would it had to be terrifying, but he had that courage to say, I can see the bigger picture and
Absolutely.
I got to move forward, and there was risk there.
Oh yeah, absolutely. But I think when his approach to things was number one, storytelling. And how are
Hmm.
you going to tell that story?
Yeah.
Number two is grabbing the right tools to tell that story. And sometimes it's going to be something high tech,
Mm.
and sometimes it's going to be something very, very simple. And you have to have good judgment to be able to figure out both for number one, telling the right story,
Yeah.
but number two, not wasting your money either, time and money. So, you know, I
Well
I,
said.
I always talk about, designing things and deciding what tool to pull out of the toolbox.
Hmm.
And I remember when in the 80s, um, the architects were being forced at Imagineering to use AutoCAD.
Mm.
And there were a lot of them that were very upset about it. And, I can draw faster than that.
Hmm.
But, the fact that you've got a digital file that you can now overlay and send and do different things, it's a great tool. So what I used to say is, so when you're reaching in your job box, in your toolbox, and you're going to drive a nail, let's say, into wood, what tool do you pick up?
Hmm.
The proper tool is a hammer. Now, don't have a hammer and you pick up a screwdriver. Can you drive a nail with a screwdriver?
Mm.
Sure, but it's not going to be efficient.
Right.
It's not going to be safe, and you're
Yeah.
probably not going to do a very good job at it.
Yeah.
So you can't let a story be told purely by what the new technology is
Uh-huh.
necessarily. You have to determine, is it the best tool to tell that story?
That's
And
beautiful.
there's a great story about Yale Gracie working on Pirates, and Yale Gracie was a master at special effects. And as you're going up the waterfall at the end of Pirates, and you look in these little alcoves and such, and you see these blinking little red lights or little red eyes
Hmm.
that are the rats that are sitting in the darkness. Those were originally done by Yale Gracie grabbing a tuna can and painting it black and putting the holes in it
Mm.
with a red light within it. So he didn't go out spending at that time hundreds of dollars.
Hmm.
He made it simple, but it was extremely effective.
That's wonderful. Hey,
Yeah,
Matt. So we got a great cast tonight. We have Sarah and Venerina and Dawn, and we have Kat. I like parentheses, Cat in the kingdom. And great. So I would love for them to ask their questions. And
sure.
you've already,
Fire away.
I'm good to go. I'll tell you this. You've already given me a lot to think about this week. And so I'm
Okay,
like,
good.
I'm in a good place. So I'm going to turn it over to them to ask you questions
Very good.
and to have, yeah. So I don't know who wants to go first, but I see unmuted. I think Sarah would love to go first because
Matt, I love
Yes.
that, and you start us off with Imagineering. So and talking about some of those hidden details. In doing my research and learning even more about you and your family's legacy, I heard that you might have an iteration of your birthday
Oh,
carved literally into the stones of Disneyland. So I'm curious, maybe if you could tell us and our listeners a little bit more about what you know about that, and your family's mark, right, on the so many of the parks, right? And what does that look like or feel like to have it so deeply woven? We talk, as Jeff led us in the beginning here, about that magic, and how you're woven into it. There's not many folks that we come across that are physically woven into the magic that so many folks come to. So I'm curious, tell us a little bit more about, what is this, what we've heard about your birthday and, the mark that you have physically left in Disney.
oh, okay. Well, and I actually did start. I'll throw this in. I won't labor upon it, but so I knew I wanted to work at Imagineering, and I was catering to that. So my schooling was catered to doing theme park design, and started 2D, but ended up in sculpture.
Okay.
So, and I thought this is great. I don't have to compete with my dad or my brother now. I'm going to go 3D. And so, anyways, I out of high school, I started at Disneyland, and I was in merchandise, and then I went into entertainment, and then I started at Imagineering, and I started in the model shop, specifically hired to sculpt rock work for Disneyland Paris, but I did architectural models also. So, anyways, I was doing rock work, and then I ended up in character facades shortly thereafter, which is architectural, but using the same medium. We were using cement plaster. So with this project you're talking about, Fantasmic had opened up at Disneyland, and it was so popular that the guests were standing in the planters and killing the plants to see the show. So Imagineering with Disneyland decided they were going to do this expansion project, and we were going to tier the space out and have more hardscape for the guests to stand in, and they'd be able to see over people's heads too. So along Rivers of America, I'm doing this stonework with these columns with fence work, and my boss comes by, and he says, Matt, he says, in this wall here, I want you to put an arched, bricked in archway. And, it was only 3-4 feet tall, 3.5 feet tall. And then in the keystone, he says, put a date. And I went, and then he walked away. And I said, okay. And so as I'm doing this, and this was actually something, I was art directing the guys to do the character facade stuff, but this was something I thought, okay, I'm going to do it myself. While those guys are doing this, I'll do this piece. So as I'm doing this, I'm thinking, okay, I'm now at the keystone. What date do I put here? And I was looking around, and I see the Columbia, the ship there, and so I wrote 1764. And one of the art directors from Disneyland came by, and she says, Matt, hey, this is looking great. She says, but what is 1764? I don't get it. What's that all about? So we were walking along Rivers of America. This is early in the morning before the guests were in the park. And and I said, well, actually, this area here, this port and everything, was built in 1764, primarily for the Columbia, and that was the era, 1764. So that's what I put it up. And she was kind of frowning and kind of looking at me every now and then as we're walking. And I said, okay, okay. John came by and he asked me to put a date on it. I didn't know what date to do. So that's 200 years before my birth. She says, now that makes sense. And then she walked off. So it was kind of a funny little thing that started popping up on the internet. And everyone started asking, what does anyone know what 1764 is all about? And so some of my friends, Imagineers, were saying, hey, Matt, people are asking about your date on your keystone. You gonna hop on and tell them? And I said, no, let's keep it going for a while. Let's let them figure out what's going on. It's actually kind of fun to see what people are coming up with. And I was doing a talk with a Disneyana group in Anaheim. Oh gosh, I don't know how many years ago now. 2010, maybe something like that. No, before that, 2006, 7. And I didn't realize that Dave Smith, the archivist, was in the audience. And Dave came up to me afterwards and he says, Matt McKim, he says, I can't tell you how many letters I've gotten about 1764. And he says, it was just a month ago I found out it was your birthday. So even Dave Smith didn't even know about it, which I thought was kind of fun. So we kept it a secret for a long time.
All right.
What is the wildest thing that you've heard as an idea of what that date meant?
Oh gosh. Well, the funny thing is, Eddie Sato was also one of the art directors on this, and Eddie just passed away here recently, which was a shock. Great guy, and a great friend. But Eddie had talked about in redoing the island, Tom Sawyer's Island, and trying to do a connection with pirates and Mansion and everything. There were a lot of people that started connecting dots and coming up with, and I think there's actually I don't think it's in a book form, but it's on the internet. There's a whole story of this whole thing. And I think even my dad and myself were mentioned in this too, which I found kind of fascinating. But yeah, anyways, people have come up with all kinds of things, that it was going to be Lafayette's pathway to get to Pirates and Mansion, and
Trying to connect those different areas of the park together. And I love that people got close enough to you and your dad to think that it was the two without necessarily putting two and two together.
Oh,
That's amazing.
I think Venerina is so she's got papers, she has a life, but believe it or not, everybody, she has a life outside this podcast.
Grad school is not for the faint of heart.
Yeah, right. So Venerina, let's if you have anything you want, sorry to bombard you with your turn next, Venerina, but if you do, I just want to be kind to you and your schedule, and if you have a question or something that makes you curious, go for it, my friend.
Okay, awesome. Thank you. I appreciate that. So, actually, I do have a question for you, Matt.
Sure.
What was it like working with your dad, who was already a legend, as an Imagineer?
Yeah, well, what's actually funny? We didn't work together per se. He retired in January of 87, and I started in December of 87. So technically we didn't work together. But I won't bore you with the story. It actually took me 11 months to get into Imagineering. My dad set me up with the first interview, and then he backed off and said, you've got to do it. It's got to be your portfolio and you doing it, which I appreciated. I didn't want any favors. But and I actually clocked out of Disneyland at 1 a.m. on the Monday I was starting at Imagineering, and 7 hours later, I was working at Imagineering. So that was kind of wild. And Disneyland was going to do this exiting paperwork thing, and they basically said, you know what, we don't want to do the paperwork, just go to Imagineering. So I never did any exiting paperwork or anything like that. It was kind of funny. But I will tell you though that because my dad had just retired and me just starting, other than the fact that there's like 40 years between us, I look like my dad. My dad looks like me. Yes. So I used to have the old timers walking down the hall in the morning sometimes, and they'd say, "Good morning, Sam," and I'd start to correct him, and then, never mind, "Good morning," But yeah. So, anyways, but unfortunately, we never worked side by side.
No, but it's in the blood. And I'll say this, we've interviewed so many Disney people. you know, the fact that you sort of I think it's beautiful that you sort of um I don't know, used to, okay, back in the day, you had a farm. And then you shared the farm, the family your kids took over the farm. That was life.
Yeah.
That's not nepotism. That's the way things should be.
Yeah.
And then, but I see it in so many Disney, beautiful Disney people that have all the talents and all the ingenuity and the imagination, but it runs in the blood. It
Yeah.
runs in the
Yeah.
blood. And so when you were hired by that's not just, oh yeah, hey, my dad worked for Disney, so therefore no, that's
No,
not how it works.
no,
It's not.
no.
It's in the blood. It's in your blood. And I think that is, I think that's
Well,
something. Yeah.
even sitting around the dinner table, you don't realize how much you're absorbing and hearing stories or hearing him talk about work or whatever. Um, so a lot of you folks are a little bit more East Coast, so you're probably going to the Magic
Not me.
Florida.
Not
No,
me.
but most of you are going to the Magic Kingdom. So my dad not only had worked on the 64, 65 World's Fair, um, but also when Lincoln came to Disneyland with changes and such, that he worked on that also. But he was the art director for the Hall of Presidents. And so when he was working on that project around the dinner table, Brian and I used to play a game with him. And my dad was incredible with detail and just studying and reading and thinking about things. And so he had to know these presidents very well. So we would throw a number out. So for instance, we'd say 16. Dad would say 16th president was Abraham Lincoln, 6'4", 185 pounds. And he would list all of this stuff about him. And he had to research the clothing. And did they wear cotton? Did they wear silk? Was it a wool? What was the make? What was, so everything that he could gather, he was putting in. And if there was a watch fob, there was a bulge in the vest, and there was a pocket watch in there. So as you're looking up at these presidents, it's going back in history. All of that stuff was researched. And my dad said, I am not going to get any letters about you used the wrong material for that president's shirt or whatever, So yeah.
I love that.
Anyways, you absorb a lot of this stuff, as I say.
I'm sure. I'm sure.
Going
I
through life.
think Don's about ready to
Oh,
talk.
yes.
Oh, I was just gonna say I love hearing all this, and I love that your dad has a window on Main Street at Disneyland
And Florida.
and Florida.
Yeah.
And then
yeah.
sitting at the dinner table, absolutely, you just absorb. You don't even realize it because it's your everyday. So going back to the first memory you have of Disneyland, like what is your first memory where you kind of had that? I like this place. I love it. It's magical. I get what my dad does. I guess Oprah calls it your aha moment. Like as a kid, what was that for you?
That's kind of hard to answer.
You can have more than one. We'll let you have more than one.
But I mean,
it is a good question. I think
it's being young, walking into this environment. It's immersive. It's sights, it's sounds, it's textures, it smells. The characters, and it's all there. It's all alive. It's vibrant. But actually, gosh.
I love that I stumped you, by the way.
Yeah. Now I wanted to go back farther than just like 8 years old. But,
yeah, do it.
I remember walking in from the entrance and going underneath the tunnel, and my dad saying, "Hey, Matt, what do you want to do when you grow up?" And I remember pointing up to the train and saying, and as a kid, I didn't say engineer or conductor. I said, I want to drive the train. And And then I had said I basically want to do something with the characters. So those were the two things walking into the park that I remember doing. And since you guys, again, most of you were East Coasters, here's a funny story for you. So we used to, the first person to see the Matterhorn driving down the 5 freeway got a quarter. So we were all always knowing when we were getting close, and we would be looking for the Matterhorn. But one of these times we were in the park, and there's a little over 6 years between my brother and myself. We're very close though. And I used to love to go into the magic shop and either get a magic trick or a gag. And as I got older and had more money, I'd buy the masks, if you remember those things from the past. So anyways, this one time I had gotten a gag, and it's towards the end of the day, and Brian and I are near the railroad station, and across the way at the Emporium was my mom and dad. And I looked over and they were talking to a gentleman, and he was in suit and tie. And I think I was 7 or 8 years old, something like that. And so my dad waves us over and he says, "Come over, I want to introduce you to somebody." So he introduces us, and the gag that I had gotten was one of those wind up hand buzzers. Do you remember those? And it would on a little popping spring, and it would
Do
vibrate.
I?
Yes. So I had it on, I had it wound up, and I reached out and I shook this guy's hand, and he jumped, and then realized what it was, and he started laughing. And so anyways, he left, and my dad turns to me and he says, "This one," he points to my brother, "I don't need to worry about. You, Matt, thank you very much. That was the president of Disneyland. It was Dick Nunes." And that was the first time I had met Dick Nunes. I buzzed him.
Oh, hello.
My
Oh my God.
And
that's hilarious, but he'll always remember that.
well, the thing is, I kicked myself every time because I would see him either at the park or I'd see him at Imagineering, and we'd chit chat, and then he'd leave, and I would forget. Oh shoot, I wanted to ask him, "Do you remember the first time we met?"
You should have done it again just out of sheer, like, be like,
Deja vu, Dick.
deja vu. Be like, he'd be like, "Ugh, oh, ow, ow," and then it'd be like, "Do you remember?" He goes, "It was you."
That's so funny.
Matt, were you ever able to, I mean, not right away, but were you ever able to ask him that question? Like, do you remember when I was a kid?
I didn't, and of course now he's passed away.
Yeah.
But yeah, and we're gonna write a book on Dad, and he never got around to it. But and I wanted to get, some stories from Dick. My dad knew him when he was, I think my dad said he was like assistant supervisor of Adventureland. And so he knew him way, way back. And in fact, this is also a funny story with Dick. My dad went down for a meeting with Dick and a bunch of other people down at Disneyland. This was early to mid 60s. And I don't know exactly what project, but I have a feeling it was maybe one of the parades. So my dad gets down there, and Dick says, "Okay, Sam, before we get started," he says, "I want you to know I got a phone call today." And it was Walt. And Walt said, "Sam's coming down there. Sam McKim is coming down, and he's going to have a meeting with you, Dick. And whatever Sam wants, you give it to him." And I thought, wow, Dick didn't have to tell my dad that story. He could have just, said, no, we don't want to do this or whatever. But that was the relationship that they had, and they really respected each other. And I came across just recently a letter from Dick when my dad retired, and he couldn't make it to the retirement party here in California. But what a tender letter that he had written my dad. And he says, when I go to certain areas within the parks, he says, I think of Sam McKim, and along that line. And it was just a nice little, thinking of you, Sam, and sorry I can't be there.
And isn't it those little moments, that little just insight, like, hey, just so you know, when I think of you.
Yeah.
That is
Yeah.
such a beautiful, tender thing to where that can really empower someone. It's not just the week, but your entire lifetime
Oh
to
yeah.
go, oh, I was appreciated this much.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
Mhm.
I think that
Well,
gets.
I'll tell you. I'm sorry.
Oh, I was gonna say, Matt, I think that just gets to what Don was saying around that like dinner table conversation.
Yeah.
It's a shame that you're not able to do some of those interviews or capture some of those pieces now, but
Yes.
what a way to like in that letter to capture the essence. Like,
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
your dad, you don't know Sam, your dad. And in some ways, because of the work that you've done for so long, you've been able to hear some of the stories.
Oh yeah.
Um, Mistaken down the hallway a couple times, right?
Yeah.
But like to actually see your dad through the eyes of someone else and the joy and the camaraderie, right? Doesn't that speak to just volumes of who he is and why telling his story is just so important?
Oh,
Yeah, and Sarah, that's
it
good
is.
because
Thank you.
good. Yeah.
You know, I was doing a podcast with Vince G here a little while ago. We're going to pick it back up again, but when I was talking to Vince about Dad, and I said, and this is leading up to December of 24. I said, Dad would have been 100 years old
Mm.
this December, and Vince says, "Oh my gosh, you guys have got to put something together for your dad." So we did put a centennial celebration at the Bowers Museum in Santa Ana, not far from the park. And we did a 1 day thing with 2 panels, people talking about dad. And we had a 35-foot by 70-foot area that took you through his whole life
Mm.
from being a child actor to 2 wars, 2 art schools, and then Disney, and then
Yeah.
things he did outside of Disney. And
Yeah.
even some of his old colleagues going through said, "Oh my gosh, I didn't know your dad did this. I didn't know this part of your dad's life."
Mm.
And it was interesting to hear some of these stories. In fact, Floyd Norman, um, uh, the amazing animator, they used to go into each other's offices and chit chat and everything. And they found out they had been in the same company in Korea in the army together, but they never saw each other, never knew each other.
Wow.
So they became good friends, even better because of that connection. But
Wow.
Floyd had said something that day in this panel where he said, there's a little age difference between your dad and yourself and myself. He says,
Mm.
but I was this young animator and I was kind of intimidated by Walt.
Mm.
And he says, it was your dad that actually taught me how to deal with Walt, how to approach Walt, and how to deal with him.
Yeah.
I had never heard that story before, and that was really
That's cool.
sweet.
And that's really interesting of how, like, hey, this is Walt. On one level, it's like, this is Walt. But
Yeah,
on another level, it's like, this is Walt.
yeah, yeah.
And this is how when you talk to him, he's a person. He's a human being. And I love that. I think that's so
So
cool.
I have to make a slight correction here, diplomatically.
Go
So
for it.
I had watched one of your podcasts with my friend Greg Ziak.
Oh, I love Greg. Greg he's on all the time.
Okay, well, Greg made a slight mistake.
Okay.
And he had said that my dad both respected Walt, but also was afraid of Walt.
Oh, okay.
And my dad was never afraid of Walt.
No.
That never came up in any of our conversations
Yeah.
whatsoever.
Yeah.
And I have to tell you an interesting story. Well, first off,
Well,
my
let's
dad.
correct let's correct
I'm
that
sorry.
because I think that's important. I think that's important to you and your story too, because we love Greg and we love you
Oh
and
yeah,
there's no, you guys are friends and
yeah.
there is no bad blood or nothing like that.
No.
Absolutely. But
He
let's
misunderstood something.
yeah,
I don't know what it was,
I
but
know.
you
I,
my
I
dad
talk
respected him.
hyperbolically all the time and I always say stupid things that no, Greg, you
He
didn't
was
say
a
something
father
stupid.
figure.
See, I already said something stupid.
No. You're fine.
Okay.
But he was a father figure to my dad.
Yeah.
He was his boss. So there was this respect, but there was a comfort level too. And the first time that my dad met Walt, my dad had come over from 20th Century Fox, and art department to work there to help Walt. And so there were a few guys in the room over in the animation building downstairs. And my dad said one day, this mustached head pokes around the corner and says, "Hi, I'm Walt. Who are you guys?" And so they went around and introduced themselves. And Walt said, "I really appreciate you studio guys coming over here to help me design and build Disneyland. I really appreciate that, guys." And so he says goodbye and he leaves. Well, like a week later, a few days later, my dad sees him in the hall and they're passing. And my dad says, "Good morning, Walt." And this is before name tags, too. And Walt said, "Good morning, Samuel," and just kept walking. And my dad thought, holy smokes, how many guys does he know here at the studio? He just met me the other day and he remembers my name. And strangely enough, he called him Samuel most of the time. He didn't call him Sam, who my dad went by Sam, but Walt just called him Samuel. Huh. And so there was one other little thing I was going to tell. Oh, so my dad was at WED, and Dick Irvine, who was president at that time of WED, my dad was talking to Dick in the hallway, and they're leaning in the doorway and they're talking to each other. And Walt comes up. And so Walt says good morning to them. And then he lays into Dick and just says, "Dick, I told you to do this and it didn't happen. Why not?" And he just went down this line. He just started hammering him. And my dad said it was so awkward. He wanted to kind of slip away and just kind of disappear, and he couldn't, but he had never seen this side of Walt before.
Right.
So for my dad and the other artist, as my dad said, he coddled the artists.
Yeah.
He really took care of his artists.
Right.
But his lieutenants, they were put on the line. And if he told you to do something, you better do it.
I also wonder though, Matt, if we have, I think folks oftentimes in many career aspects think that are afraid of people, like that term, like, "Oh, I'm afraid of you." It's not actually that. It's, deep respect or, afraid to disappoint, right?
It's actually reverence.
Perfectionism.
Oh, yeah, reverence is such a good way to put it.
I think reverence is the word, because reverence is, you could be reverent to somebody, go, "Oh, I've never seen that type of power before." Wow.
Yeah.
And that's, I think, what your dad probably saw. It wasn't fear in that moment. It wasn't fear. It was probably reverence.
No.
In the truest sense of the word, it's not fear, because fear is, "Oh, you might hurt me."
Right.
Reverence is, "Oh, shoot, you're a powerful man." And
Yeah.
and I think to see someone's power when and people that have power, when they subdue it and they treat people, they don't abuse people with that power.
Right.
They infuse people with that power. They and that's what Walt did mostly. But there were these little times where Walt had to take control. And when people saw it, it was like, "Oh, wow, you're Walt Disney." And that's not fear. I think that's reverence,
And he had expectations of people that they didn't even know they were capable of doing.
Oh, sure.
So yeah, having that, you don't want to disappoint someone and they're like, "No, you can do it. You're going to do it." And there's been so many people we've had on the podcast, wonderful, people that have stories. And that's kind of what I've gathered, is that he would put, he could see your potential when you couldn't even see it yourself. And so when someone sees that, and you don't want to let them down. So I think there's that element also.
So here's what I want to do. We typically go for an hour. I want to go to Kat, and Kat, I want you to hog this time, because if you want, because you're the very last of the podcasting people, but I want you to express your heart, and I'm gonna mute myself, and you could ask one question or more, and have your time. But then I will.
I give you permission to ask me multiple questions.
All right, let's celebrate. Kat, go do your. Do you have anything you want to say?
I guess it's a little bit of a question, but I guess more of like a topic, I guess, that you can expand on. The teacher in me, I guess, thinks in this way, where, I work with kids and they're the next generation going up. And I'm huge on the nuts and bolts of Disney. Like I love it. I'm from Florida. I pretty much every major milestone of my life in the parks. So to me, like I think within the last 10 years, this boom of everybody being okay with like knowing how things works, like I think even like 12 years ago, if somebody tried to explain an attraction, people would be like, we're not supposed to know that. Don't talk about that. It ruins the magic. And I'm like, it absolutely does not. It makes the magic so much cooler if I can know how that works. I want to know how that whole thing, comes together. So, and as things get cooler. But the one thing I think we also kind of have the unique, I guess, opportunity to do is start teaching more in like thinking like an Imagineer. Like I think I just hold this, I guess, this occupation up because I feel like anyone at a job has like issues. They have problems. They have to solve things. They need to put things together. They need to be creative. But I feel like Imagineering kind of takes that to a whole nother level. And I feel like a lot of people don't, I don't know how your brain works. How can you just get something done when you physically don't think you can get it done? Or maybe when you're not, like you said, when you're not really provided, you don't want to go out and spend $100 to make that work. And so, yeah, you find a tuna can and some lights and you make it work and it still looks magical. No one would know. So I feel like that's, I guess more important these days is what does it take to think like an Imagineer? How should we be tackling as we go into the future, our problems like you guys did back in the day?
Oh, I love that question.
Yeah, well, you can even take this all the way back to Walt, and Walt never liked to hear it can't be done. No, it can't be done. So I think it was always a problem was presented, and it was plopped in your lap or it was plopped in a group's lap, and it's like, okay, solve it. Let's get this done. And you could even take it to the very end of a project and how many hours we would put in to get the job done too. So so something that just popped in my head. So I was doing rock work for Paris, and and I was young. I was, in my mid-20s, and it seemed like a lot of responsibility being dropped in your lap. You hadn't done this really, but there was the infrastructure there, and there were people you could go to and get the help from. But we built over 3,000 cages, and I don't know if you're familiar with that term for rock work, but like a mountain is sliced up into sections, and those sections are called cages, and then they're numbered and they're stacked and welded together and such. So we built over 3,000 of them, 75 miles east of Paris. And we were put up in a very nice hotel in Paris, and we'd get up at the crack of dawn and we'd be driving out at 5 a.m. We'd stop at the patisserie and pick up our little croissants and head out. And so we were at this factory way out, and there was so much being done that they were actually teaching farmers how to weld. And so we're teaching these guys how to make these cages and art directing and everything. I was going through drawings to make sure that they were correct before we built them. It wasn't just me, there were others. But you get drawings that would be for the new Fantasyland in the early 80s, or they might be really old drawings. And so things had to be converted from standard size to metric. And we had to catch the mistakes. And there was one that it was, well, Pinocchio, there was something, but Snow White, Scary Adventure, there was something I couldn't figure out. And I had to pull somebody over to take a look. And we looked at it and it was like, I think it's okay. I think you're all right. Let's go do it. So we built this thing. And so I started bringing these cages into Snow White, and they weren't fitting right. And I think after the second cage that came in, I realized something was majorly wrong. And I started measuring. I found out that they were built twice the size they should have been. Now, these were only, I don't know, 14 cages or something like that were going in, from small to larger ones.
Oh my
But
goodness.
I told the guys to take a break. I went back to double check. And I was thinking, okay, my boss likes to get excited very easily over things. So I've got to come up with a solution and tell him not to get excited. Have a solution, you know? So I brought him out. I said, we've got a problem. Before I share it with you, you can't get excited. You've got to promise me you're not going to get excited. I said, I have a solution. So I'm going to tell you, you're going to nod, and then you're going to walk away. Tomorrow, you're going to come back, and it's going to be fixed. So I learned fairly early on that you can't just bring a problem to somebody. You've got to have a solution with it.
Wow, that's really good.
That's how you're going to have to be professional and succeed here. So so I found out all the problems, and then I found out what the solution was for it. So after it was all corrected and reinstalled, he was fine. And so I thought, whew, I got out of that one. But I think it's really looking at situations and finding out what the best solution is, the best way to tell the story. And then along the way, you might have to switch directions a little bit, or spend a little less because the budget got tighter.
Yeah.
And that's where you've got to weigh the issues. And as a production designer, and I did that most of my time there as a production designer, you're on the fence between creative and finance. And you've got to please both sides of that fence.
Risk and security.
Yes.
Yes, it is. And that's absolutely the case. It's and that is the thing, especially now in all kinds of different areas of life. I work in the nonprofit world, and it's the same thing. What's security? Do we expend our money? Are we just going to throw it away? We only have this amount of gold doubloons, but what do we do with it? Well, if we spend it, but that's risk. There's risk. But then the thing that we've done, well, we did this years ago, it worked, and it's security. Let's just reproduce the things that we did years ago, and it will yield the same results. That is not the case.
You have to improve upon things, though, too.
You have to, yeah. And going back to nostalgia, and you keep dropping great words, which I love this interview with Matt. You're my buddy, because I got to tell you, you're saying all the things story. You keep saying the word story.
Yeah.
All these. That's it.
Keep talking. The sun's going down and it's getting in my eye.
But I also think he's hitting on to Jeff and Kat. I think this gets to your point for like in the classroom, right? Life's gonna give you curveballs, and whether it is you're not gonna have the same finances, the measurements don't line up, right? But we all have a choice of how we respond to those hurdles that we come across. And I'm very curious in what the solution was. Thank goodness it was 14, not 3,000 measuring.
I don't know if there is a solution. I think
Right?
that's the question we're all kind of wrestling with. And that's why I think, like with Walt, his story helps shape our lives, because when we hear stories of Walt, or like Matt, your dad, and you and your story, all these stories help shape our listeners and my life. This is why I'm very selfish as a podcaster, because I get to hear your story. I get to hear stories about Walt. I get to hear, and all these stories, I get to process them through the week, and I go, wow, it makes me a better person the week to come, but it
Well,
really
that's
does.
could be.
And yeah, but I think the world's not the same. It's
No.
not.
No,
It's we can't go back,
no,
but these
that's okay.
stories and your story, I think, really shapes me and us and our listeners as new people that wake up Monday morning. We're recording on Sunday, so Monday morning we wake up and we go, "Oh wow, my week may have just gotten a little better because why? Because the stories that of story shapes life. You know,
And it helps us, Jeff, with that mindset. And I think, Matt, that's a lot of what you're talking about, right? And Kat, and what you're talking about, how do we inspire and the youth of
Mm.
today is that and Imagineering mindset, right? Life looks a little bit different, but the mindset that you had to look creatively at that challenge, right? You didn't stop in your tracks. Right in that space. And I'm sure that would not have been a well-received message in the moment. I can only imagine, right, in that. But, you have this ability to pivot. And I think you talked a lot about the professionalism that comes with how do you deliver. Like, yes, this
Mm.
is the challenge, right? And you going back to your story earlier with Walt, you're accountable in that moment. Like, this is the hurdle, but I'm going to come to you with a solution. That mindset, I think, is something that the more and more we can cultivate that, remind ourselves on a Monday morning, right? Because who knows what the week ahead is going to give us, but also how do we inspire it in our kids, in our classrooms, in the folks that we're working with in different spaces
Yeah.
to just be willing to lean into that mindset a little bit more. And I love that that's part of your story that you're sharing from your experience.
Well, there's a solution, and you just have to find it. And if it's a solution that you can't find, you can go out and find it from others. And it's what I used to call cross pollination at Imagineering. And there was a time when you had more time to walk around and check on others, check on other projects, see what's going on. And but the more people you know, the more resources you're going to have.
Mm-hmm.
So if I've got an issue and a problem, and it's kind of special effects oriented or whatever, then I'm going to go to my buddies
Yeah.
in special effects, and I'm going to go talk to them and say, "Hey, I've got this problem. I've got this issue.
Mm-hmm.
I can't figure myself out of the box here. Help me."
Mm-hmm.
Or paint or whatever. And you're going to go to these resources and you're going to touch bases.
Mm.
And then you're going to learn something new too. So hopefully you're going to take that to the next project.
I love that.
And I even say too, in Herbie used to give my dad a hard time and saying, Herb Ryman, he used to say, "Sam, why do you take these junky little jobs here at Imagineering? Why not stand up and say you want something else or whatever?" And my dad says, "I just take what I'm given and I learn from it."
Mm.
Well, the thing is, you might have a really bad job that you don't enjoy,
Mm-hmm.
project wise, or people you're dealing with, or whatever. The thing is, do the best you possibly can with it.
Mm-hmm.
And the next time it comes around, learn from that and know I'm not putting myself in that position again, or I can't work with this individual. I'm going to have to do a little bit of a shift, or I don't have the talent base to do that job properly.
Yeah.
I don't want to put myself in that position again. Whatever it is, whatever bad experience you had, learn from it so
Learn.
that you move on.
I love
You know
it.
what I mean? And
I know
I'll tell you
exactly.
something else that's important too.
Yeah.
And this is where you were talking about Walt giving someone a job to do, and you never even thought you would do it. If it
Yeah.
was exitensio writing music,
Yeah.
or whatever.
Or Bob Gurr to build a vehicle like the monorail.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The thing
I
is,
heard that from him. Yeah.
yeah. But the thing is, you've got to delve into that and go for it. And I remember a friend of mine out of the model shop, great guy, great painter, and all. And he says, "Matt, this was called dimensional design." He says they're asking me to go in to production design, where you take things a little bit further, and you go to the field usually and do an install. And I had been doing that for years. And he says, "Matt, I'm scared to death, and I don't know if I'm really going to like it and if this is the right thing for me." And I said, "Mike, this is not a death sentence. You're not being sent to prison. This isn't it. I said, go do it. You don't like it, you come back to the model shop and just say, this isn't for me. But at least you'll know, you won't know sitting here now going, oh, should I have done that or not? Go do it, experience it. And if it's right, stick with it. And if not, come back. He went and did it. It wasn't for him. He went back to the model shop.
Man,
But he wouldn't have known if he hadn't have tried.
Yeah, that's a
Yeah.
great reminder.
it is. Hey, Matt, you are a wealth of information.
Ah,
And I feel good. Like there's a good feeling of heavy. I'm like, I'm actually gonna listen to my own podcast, believe it or not.
There you
And
go.
I might actually, listen back to the things you've said because I think this has been good. I can't say that for all our podcasts, by the
Uh-oh.
way.
Uh-oh.
No, I'm joking. No, I listen to every single podcast. All my children are my children. I love all the podcasts equally.
You know,
That's a lie. That's just something you say. Here's here's how I think we should end. Let's do some rapid fire real quick.
okay.
Bonk, bonk, bonk. Fun. Let's end it on a rapid fire. Like, what's your favorite, park ride, or what's your favorite churro, or I don't know, and let's go and because I think you've given such a lot of deep information for us to chew on, but I think let's end it in
You wanna lighten it up?
yeah, let's do that. So we're gonna go with Sarah first. Bam.
What's your favorite ride in any of the parks?
Ah, there you go.
Mm,
Feel like this is like asking somebody what their favorite movie is.
or favorite
Right.
kid.
Which
Yeah.
child do you like the
Yes.
most? Exactly. That's
I feel like most parents have an answer to that. We just won't say it out loud.
But you don't verbalize it. You're asking me to verbalize. As far as kind of thrill ride type of thing, I've always loved the Matterhorn.
mm-hmm.
The last iteration of the bobsleds I did not like. They've gotten a little better. But love Pirates, love Mansion.
What about an international one? Is there an international ride you like? I know we have iterations of those in different parks, but thinking
Yeah.
maybe something outside of the traditional box.
That's a good question. Big Thunder in Paris is kind of fun to be boarding on the mainland and going underneath rivers of America to
Ooh,
come up.
I wanna do
That's
that.
where we stop. That's where we stop.
Good.
Good answer. Venerina, bam. Your turn.
What is your favorite park?
Oh, sorry, you guys on the East Coast.
I know we're so
Disneyland.
mean. What?
Disneyland is.
You
where
can
I
say
grew up.
Disneyland. We don't care.
Yeah, is where I grew up and everything. But I have,
Same.
gosh, Disneyland Paris is very special to me too. Just because I lived over there for a couple of years building it, designing here and building it there, and it's a gorgeous park. Tokyo Disney Sea is a gorgeous park.
Perfect.
Ugh.
Perfect answer.
Yeah,
Wait, you don't need it.
I'm gonna leave it at that.
I know. Bam, that's it. All right. To Cat.
All right. Favorite nighttime spectacular or parade, if you can't choose one, or if you want one of each.
Oh gosh.
You guys are hard hitting. Come on.
Yeah.
This is supposed to
I mean,
be.
I think of Fantasmic in California. I know the stage was built for Florida, so it can do a lot more. But I don't know. There's something magical about Disneyland's Fantasmic. Parade-wise, the electrical parade is growing up with that and everything else. It's special.
Mm.
Bam.
Don, Don's next.
Okay, I have a good one.
Okay.
Walking into Disneyland and experiencing the whole day there, what is the one area, you can't say the window on Main Street. What is the one area that makes you feel like your dad touched that?
Oh.
Oh gosh.
God, wow, Don.
That's a good one. I
Boy,
haven't been asked that one.
she's
More,
look at
more
she's got
deep
these
questions
boxing
on
gloves.
this
They're
easy
like,
section.
Yeah,
this is
I mean-
supposed to relieve the tension.
So one of the things that I do enjoy doing is grabbing an ice cream and going and sitting up on the little patio in the chairs on Main Street and just watching people go by and see their reactions and how they react to things and everything. And my dad had a lot to do with Main Street. Windows, actually. There's a funny story with that in the beginning, but and the architectural ornamentation. My dad worked on Mansion early on, not for the final version of it, but early on. So, gosh, yeah, maybe those little tidbits.
Dawn.
you know?
Dawn.
I love that though. I'll just say this last thing. Sitting on a park bench, I know we all here today feel like that is the funnest thing to do is just to people watch and take it all in, isn't it?
Yeah,
That's so underrated. I love it. That's a
I
perfect.
I brought a friend of mine that I knew since kindergarten. He left his family at home, and it was just the two of us. We went into Disneyland, and once we got in, he was like, "Okay, let's go to the Matterhorn." Whatever. And I said, "Whoa, whoa, whoa, Rob, let's just take a breather here. Let's just take a look at the buildings. Have you ever noticed the buildings and how they were designed and why they were designed the way they were? Do you see how the street actually points down as it goes? That's forced perspective. It's a movie trick. You know, the trees are actually trimmed that way." And I just started pointing all this stuff out as we're walking in and everything. At the end of the day, he says, "Matt, I have never experienced the park like this before." And he says, "Thank you. You slowed me down and I saw things I haven't seen before." He says, "I'm going to look at the park differently the next time I'm in."
And that's your book. Look at the park differently.
And that's your
Look
book.
at the park differently. I love it.
That's amazing. And Matt, thank you so much for being here.
Oh, you're welcome.
And
you know, I want to tell you, and I didn't share the little tidbit with you, but so my dad was a child actor starting in 1935 until 51, 52 was his last picture, 52. And he didn't really want to be an actor. He was successful at it, but he wanted to be an artist. So he was constantly drawing on the sets.
yeah,
And little Janie Weathers used to say, you know, people would say, where's Sammy? And she'd say, "He's over in the corner drawing." And one time he was doing, I'm going to pull in the Disney part here in a second.
do it.
But,
Do it. We're all in.
He was
Trust me.
drawing one time in a 1935 picture that Jimmy Cagney was in. And you guys are really young. I don't know if
I know
who
Cagney.
is.
I know pop culture.
Okay.
Cagney. Yeah,
Look him up.
Yeah.
Look him
No,
up.
I know Cagney. I know.
So-
I'm old enough to know better.
There you go. So my dad's sketching in between shots, and Jimmy Cagney walks by, and he says, "Hey, Sammy, what are you doing?" And he says, "Oh, I'm just sketching. Maybe I'll be
You
on the
dirty
cartoon."
rat! You killed my
Yeah,
brother.
there you go.
You dirty rat!
And what's the Yankee Doodle Dandy was also
Yeah.
a big famous one for him. So he says, "Well, I was going to be a political cartoonist at one point in my life."
Mm.
So they sat down opposite each other and they did a little sketch and they signed it to each other. And my dad talked about this forever. He says, "It's somewhere in the house. I don't know where it's at." Well, about 2 years ago, I found it.
Mm.
Oh my goodness.
So this is Jimmy Cagney's sketch to my dad.
Holy!
Oh my goodness.
What? Okay, we gotta hold on. This
Wow.
has to be. Okay,
Wow.
keep it there. I have to do this. I gotta have the speaker. Wait, no, Don, stop, don't talk because you're the speaker. But let's have. Oh no, it's not working the way I want it to work. All right, fine. Oh,
That's cool.
Matt, that is amazing. And he was a good artist. That
he
checks
was.
out.
He was.
That was good.
No.
That wasn't just a throwaway. That's not a doodle. That is somebody
yeah.
who is
Oh, they
a
sat
good
down and
artist.
did this. Well,
Yeah.
my dad was in another picture. I know you guys want to end. I'm gonna do this quick.
No, we don't. I don't want it.
So my dad was in a
Share
picture
your
called
magic.
Little Men, and it was about these adopted kids, and they're in a schoolroom, and the parents are teaching and everything. In between shots, it was like lunchtime type of thing. It was a long break. My dad went up to the chalkboard and
Wow.
he drew this. I don't know
Oh
if
my
you can see
gosh.
it. Covered wagon. There you go.
There we
Whoops.
go. Now we're cooking. With
So
some
the director walked in and they're getting ready for the next shot. And he says, wait a second, that wasn't up here before. Who did that? And my dad says, oh, I did that. And he says, okay, guys, let's set up for the shot we just did and let's redo it. And so that artwork is now in the movie, which was kind of fun, right? So
It is
I'm
fun.
just telling you that my dad was constantly sketching. He wanted to be an artist, right?
Yeah.
That was his goal. But my dad, he was known as the youngest Western film star
Oh.
at the time, and he did quite well. Here's a shot of him with John Wayne and Jennifer Jones.
Oh wow.
Oh my
My
goodness.
goodness.
So
That's incredible.
That is.
he did 3 pictures with John Wayne, and
Oh.
John Wayne says, Sammy, he says, we're not supposed to like to work with animals or kids.
We're not
But
supposed to work.
I like
man.
you, kid.
Yeah.
So
I like
he
you.
liked my dad.
Oh. Oh.
Here's a shot. Whoop, 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 whoop.
Oh.
Do you recognize who this is? Here's my dad. There's my dad's little brother, Roy Rogers,
Roy. Okay.
on Trigger.
Oh wow.
Oh my gosh, my dad would lose his mind right now at this picture.
Yeah. Yes.
So
All right.
you heard me say, I'm going to get to the secret thing here in a second. You heard me mention Jane Withers, and the first picture my dad did was with Jane Withers. Here's my dad.
Wow.
Here's Jane Withers.
Oh goodness.
Recognize this face?
I do. Oh, it's
Alfalfa from the Little Rascals.
yes.
Oh
Yes,
my
it is.
goodness.
Yeah. So my
Oh.
dad did one Little Rascals, but he was around him enough that they became good friends. And Jane, they lost touch
Oh.
after a while and then reconnected. And then Jane became a very good close friend of mine.
Wow.
But so my dad did an Mickey Mouse Ingersoll print ad while he was a film star. And that's, you can see the Mickey Mouse watch.
I see it.
Yeah.
Was he? How old was he?
He's probably
Like 14, 15.
13, 14.
Well, I see
Yeah.
a ring on the finger. I'm like,
Yeah. Kids did that back then.
okay.
Yeah.
I
Okay,
didn't know that.
so this is from Columbia Pictures. I don't know the name of the picture.
Wow.
This is my dad. Do you recognize this little guy? I don't know who this is. Do you recognize him? I know his head is down.
Michael Douglas.
No.
No, it'd be old.
It'd
I
be-
mean,
he'd be-
not Michael, the dad.
Oh yeah. No, he'd be older actually.
Okay. I do recognize that face.
Cute little kid.
Yeah.
Do you know the name Dickie Jones?
Oh, yeah.
Mm,
The voice of
I
Pinocchio?
don't.
The voice of Pinocchio?
Okay. Oh, darn it. Of all the blunders of this podcast, I should know the voice acting. Like Dickie Jones, Pinocchio. I'm usually the guy that's like, if anything, voice acting.
Yeah.
And I dropped the ball. But
That's okay.
that is.
So
it
my
doesn't make
dad
it more
tried out for the voice of Pinocchio. And he
That's
obviously didn't
impactful
get
to
it.
me.
He went to
Yeah.
Dickie. And my dad used to get a kick out of introducing Dick to people. And like at my Christmas parties, Dick and Betty would always be there. And
Whoa.
Dad would introduce him and he said, oh wow, that's great. And Dick would always say, yeah, I got 9 months out of it. Sam, you got over 30 years. He's a better deal. But after Dad died in 2004, Dick and Betty would still come to the Christmas party. And I had introduced him as the voice of Pinocchio.
Yeah.
And he turns to me and he says, Matt, your dad was actually second in line for that job. He says, if I couldn't have done it for whatever
Really?
reason,
My
he says, your
gosh.
dad would have been the voice of Pinocchio.
Really?
And those things you think of afterwards. And I should have asked my dad, were you ever walking through the studio lot with Walt one day, someday, and did you ever mention that you were at Hyperion trying out for the voice of Pinocchio? Did he know that?
Yeah.
He knew that my dad was a child actor and did a lot of westerns and everything. So
Sure.
he put my dad on a lot of Frontierland projects
Oh,
through the
wow.
years too. Yeah, because of that.
Whoa.
Matt, I feel like this book of yours that you're working on to tell these incredible stories of your dad is gonna need to be like an anthology to
Oh,
truly capture the depth of his essence and the love you have and just making sure that this legacy is carried forward. I mean, I just feel really grateful to see these pictures and hear some of the stories you've
Yes.
shared tonight.
oh,
We are
thanks.
deeply appreciative.
Oh, well, thank you.
Absolutely.
He was an amazing man, and he crammed a lot in to his almost 80 years on this earth.
Yeah.
And but it was interesting too, because a lot of people would ask, you know, Sam, you're not getting as much credit as you really should with Disney and everything.
I
Why
love
don't you just stand up and say something? But he was a very humble man. But
I
I think in many ways,
yeah.
uh, that recognition and being at the forefront, um, he had gotten out of his system when he was in the movie industry.
Yeah. Yeah.
It was, he didn't need it.
He
He
didn't
didn't
need
need the
it.
pat on the back.
And I think that humility is what, like, this to put a little pin. It's like that like when why are we on this podcast? Why have we been doing it for years? Because we want to, that embracing of humility. We're not the most popular podcast in the Disney world, and we might never be. But I always make a joke, like, if space aliens came down and we all nuked ourselves and they found the vault of all the stories, and they go, "Oh, what is this?" And they clicked on the computer, and it's us, and
Yeah,
it's preserving all these beautiful stories.
yeah,
Um,
yeah.
we don't, Barry, who started this podcast,
Oh, right.
this was never about clicks and likes. It was about preserving.
Yeah,
It was
yeah,
about preserving. I always say, sharing the magic. It's about preserving the magic. It's about sharing the stories. It's about you call it the Walt vault. We
yeah.
just want a big vault of all the stories and to save them and shamelessly, like we want all the stories, everyone, Disney behind the people behind the people, the people, or the people behind the people, just to come to us and to go, oh my gosh, this is the story, and this is my life, this is my childhood, or like this is my dad, like in your case, or this is me, this is my history and story. And that is why we exist. That is why we're
It's a
here.
good existence.
It's a beautiful existence, absolutely, 100%. And thank you. I just want to say thank you so much for sharing
Oh, you're welcome.
your
I'm
story with us.
I'm going to leave you with a Walt story
Okay.
to
Thank you.
tell you the humanity of the man.
Okay.
And I've actually told this a couple of times to Walt's granddaughter Joanna Miller, um, just a kind of reminder of her grandpa, as she calls him.
Hmm.
And so on the studio lot, there was a trailer, that temporary trailer, skirted underneath, of course, though, and they would sell magazines and candy and newspapers and such for the people at the studio. And my dad went in one time. I'm sure he was getting a candy bar or a Coke. The man had a sweet tooth. And so when he walked in, Walt was in there. And Walt was at the counter and he was picking up those little cardboard boxes, those Jersey made raisins. You remember those? And he was squeezing them. When my dad walked in, he was squeezing these little boxes. And I'm sure he was thinking, oh, this looks great, doesn't it? Kind of odd. So he looks at my dad and he says, hi, Samuel. He says, my grandkids are coming to visit me today. And he says, they always reach in my pockets to see what kind of little surprises I've got for them. And he says, I'm just making sure they're fresh. So that was Grandpa making sure that the kids were going to get something good.
That is so cute.
That's awesome.
That's adorable.
Yeah.
I love that.
There's the humanity of Walt.
I love that. Hey, so Matt, so when we every week, we're flying by, with Greg. Actually, I'll talk to you about this after the podcast.
Oh, okay.
But here's what I'll say, you're always welcome to be here, and we just thank you so much for being here. And I think
thank you for asking.
Yeah, and I especially these, I know you have a collection as well.
Oh,
yes, you do. And if you would like to share your collection, we do something every Friday with collections, and Greg has been on, and he and going back to the vault, I think it is such a cool thing to have a visual, like Greg has lots of things and he wants to, there's preservation there. The Walt vault, as I call it. We are sharing the magic. It's about sharing, but it's also about preservation. It's about documenting all the Disney things. If you're ever interested in being part of that with now you and Greg are friends, you are more than welcome to be part of that. But also just if you got a free time on a Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, something, whatever, and you say, I'm really passionate about this poster, or this thing, and I would like to share it with the world. Please, reach out to us, because that's why we exist. That's our mission.
Well, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And thank you, Greg, for being here today.
Matt, if folks want to follow along, I know you talked about.
I said Greg.
I know what you meant.
Matt, I know you mentioned.
I'm tired. I'm so sorry, everyone. Matt, thank you for being here, Matt.
You're welcome.
Yeah.
Matt, I know you mentioned you're starting back up this podcast and you're going to work on this book on your dad. If folks want to learn more or follow along as you're going down this adventure, what's the best way for folks to kind of keep it in touch about that journey as you kind of move forward with it?
Yeah, and I started setting up a web page, and I didn't finish. There's been so much on my plate right now. And I do have Instagram that I don't really jump on very often, but I need to. I'm always being told that I need to be contributing a little bit more, and that's Matt McKim _studio with Instagram.
Well, let us help you. Pop on.
Thank you.
Yeah.
We'll tag you in tonight's live broadcast and whatnot. So we'll help you with that post this week.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. And then I need to finish the website and finish the website and just kind of get back on track.
Well, but don't shit on yourself. Don't. I should do this. I should. No. What we're trying to do here as well is we're trying to build up a community of Disney people, and I always think the best, as lovely as all of us are here, the best people are Disney people to interview the other Disney people. So if we got like you and Greg, Zayak on the same, all I have to do is, record, and you guys would just have a beautiful conversation. And I think what we're trying to do is to build up that kind of community, to say, there's so many beautiful, wonderful Disney people that actually miss hanging out with each other,
Mm.
and we want to, I think we want to bring that back, and to have a place where, there's that community again, so anyways,
Very good.
if you're ever interested in, I'll
Okay.
reach out to you, and
Okay.
yeah.
Very
Okay.
good.
Hey, here's our outro. It's by Caitlin Robrock, the voice of Minnie Mouse, who is so wonderful to do this for us. I'm going to share it, and this is our outro. Here we go. Can you see it?
Yes.
Oh, thank goodness. Okay. Can you hear it?
Thank you for
Yes.
Okay.
joining us for another enchanting episode of Sharing the Magic. We have magical conversations that are crafted to your ears. The edutainment show where education and entertainment collide each week. We bring you whimsical interviews with Disney guests who share their magical experiences and reveal how they are woven into the Disney fabric. Don't forget to hit that follow button to stay updated on our latest episodes. Spread the word and let your friends know they can tune in wherever they enjoy their favorite podcasts. You can also connect with us on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, and X, formerly Twitter, at @SharingTheMagicPod. Until next time, keep sharing the magic and rattle the stars.
I like that. You could hear a little bit of the Minnie in there.
You can't. She's my favorite person. I love Caitlin so much. But
Let me see if I can play this for you. We did are we off the air?
no, hold on.
Oh,
3.
Sorry.
Hey everyone. Bye. Say bye, and we can keep talking. But yeah.
Sorry about that.
No, you're fine.
Thank you.
You're fine. All right. Oh, maybe.